So we start this week, as usual.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, can you
With
guys
what?
guess?
I can't. I don't think we've ever started the show with anything before.
With a
Something
nice-
wee.
Oh, it's a
Something to do with week.
It is wee, and it is nice. It's a nice wee review.
Oh!
Yeah.
Ah, shocker.
This one is from Lorcan51 on Sun.
Nice.
It's on Sunday. So this is this says good find. It's a 5-star review. The ones that we love, the ones that we want. Leave a 5-star review. We might read it out at the start of the show. Anyway, it's a 5-star review that says good find. Recently discovered this podcast.
Was
and
the sigh part of the email?
Yes, it's quite
The review
specifically
says
says Corey sighs due
Good
to
find.
Corey does
asthma.
a really big sigh.
Recently discovered this podcast and have already listened to several old episodes. Really fun to listen to. Amusing hearing the guys go completely off track, but also feel like I learned something. That's it. I think
Beautiful.
I wonder
That's
which
literally
old
the whole
episodes.
point.
That's it. We're doing our jobs. We're doing our jobs. Shall we start the show?
We shall start the show. Let's start
Thanks,
the
Professor
show.
Trelawney.
We're going to start the show.
He will stop the
You
show.
will stop the show tonight.
My voice could actually do that right.
You can do the best.
He will start the show tonight. Sounds more like Voldemort. Anyway, we'll start the show right now. Hello and welcome to the SCI GUYS, the show where we talk about the crazy, weird, and wonderful stories from the science world. I'm Corey, and as always, I'm joined by my co-host, Jan, and Luke Cutforth.
Hello, welcome back.
Greetings.
Greetings. This week, we'll be talking about handy-handedness and a chiral killer.
I knew at least one of those words.
Which one?
Hand.
Didn't say hand.
Thanks,
Oh, wait,
dictionary.
handy-handedness. Okay, maybe I don't know these words. I know at least none of these words.
Handy-handedness and a chiral... You know at least one of those words. Handy-handedness
You know,
and a
handedness.
chiral killer.
I don't think I've ever heard the word handedness ever used.
Left-handedness, I say, raising my right hand.
Oh, yeah.
Handedness.
Anyway, carry
handy.
on.
You know handy?
Let's not dwell on my
Killer?
familiarity with the dictionary.
That's one word you don't know. Anyway, do you guys have any idea what I'm going to be talking about today? Just from that.
Left-handed people.
You guys are way off. Today,
No.
we're going to be talking about something called thalidomide, which you may have heard of before.
No.
Luke, have you
Oh,
heard?
wait, no. You've mentioned this before, haven't you?
I might have said I'm doing an episode on
No,
thalidomide.
I mean in a previous episode.
Oh, yeah, I must have done. Yeah,
Maybe, yeah.
definitely. Yeah. So, I won't spoil it too much. Why don't we dive right into the episode?
Well, this whole episode is going to spoil it.
Yeah, but that's like saying the movie's going to spoil the movie.
It does. Technically.
No.
Don't watch Endgame. It's got Endgame spoilers in it.
honestly, I've managed to avoid spoilers this far. I'd be really annoyed if someone spoiled
Spoiled it,
Endgame
yeah.
for
Just
me.
haven't got around to it.
Well, I don't want to get spoiled. That's the issue, you know?
Yeah.
So, chirality. Do you guys know what chirality is? Do you know what something being chiral means?
No.
You can't just say no. You don't need to wait. If you don't know,
I
you can
refuse to say no.
You just said it.
No.
Ah! So, first off, do you guys know what isomers are?
No.
No? Okay. Alright, we're starting from...
You're asking the
We're
wrong
starting
people,
from
I
the
tell
bottom
you.
here.
You're asking the
Okay.
wrong people.
Do you guys know what molecules are?
I'm familiar with them.
Okay.
No.
I have a few of them.
You know what a molecule is?
No.
Yeah, no, look, I'm asking you. Do you seriously
Something
not
to
know
do
what
with
molecules?
moles?
No.
Something to do with moles, I reckon.
Right, funny. So...
Moles are made of them, aren't they? They would be.
Yeah, that's true. Thank you, James. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I mean,
So
obviously moles are made...
Something to do with moles.
Okay, right.
So there you go. I was right, Corey. Don't be so quick to judge.
Yes, moles are made primarily of molecules. That I would not argue with that at all.
And that's
A
where the name
molecule...
comes from.
No, it's not. Well, actually, I can't explicitly say that that's not where the name comes from. So we'll just leave that where it is. So a molecule is just a group of atoms bonded together. Yeah,
Nice.
very simple, very
simple
straightforward.
concept.
Now, here is the interesting part. You can have all of the same atoms arranged in a different way. And that,
Yes.
Yeah. So what I mean is you
Yeah.
can have, say, 6 carbon atoms, 12 hydrogen atoms, and 6 oxygen atoms. Yeah.
Yep.
And you can rearrange them in lots of different ways. Just like with the same kinds of Lego pieces and the same numbers of Lego pieces, you can build lots of different things
Yeah.
if you arrange them in
Yeah.
slightly different ways.
Yep.
That
Now,
makes sense.
if you've got something that has all of the same atoms in it, but in a different arrangement, those are called isomers.
Yeah,
Right,
I remember
okay,
that
okay.
word.
Yeah. Yeah. So an isomer
I've never heard of that word.
Well, yeah. So an isomer is literally just a molecule different. I guess an isomer is just two different molecules that have the exact same atoms in them,
Mhm.
just arranged in a different way. So we're going to move on very quickly from isomers to something called stereoisomers. So a stereoisomer basically just means instead of the atoms being in a completely different arrangement,
Mhm.
and when I say completely different arrangement with isomers, what I mean is that different atoms are bonded to each other.
Mhm.
So you can have, in one case, let's say you've got in one case you've got carbon atoms and oxygen atoms and hydrogen atoms. They're all bonded to each other in particular ways.
Mhm.
With isomers, different atoms are bonded to each other. So it's a completely different sort of structure.
Yeah.
Whereas with stereoisomers, it's the same atoms that are bonded to each other. They're just arranged differently in space. Now, this is a really difficult thing to kind of understand because you need to take your understanding of chemical bonds and molecules from a 2D perspective to a 3D perspective. So, again, you can have all of the same atoms bonded to each other, but have those two different molecules not look the same. You can have them, like, for example, be the mirror image of each other, but not be superimposable. The easiest way to think about this is with your hands. So my hands are
Oh.
mirror images of each other. They have all of the same
Very
parts,
true.
and they have all of the same parts connected to each other. So my pinky is like if you look at the order, it goes pinky, ring, pinky, ring, middle, index, thumb, right? And those are all connected to my hand. If I look at my my other hand, pinky, ring, index, finger, thumb. Now,
The other way.
yeah, the other way. So they're exactly identical to each other, basically. Apart from the fact that they're mirror images. So they're a mirror image of each other, and I can't superimpose one hand on top of the other unless I turn it over.
Right.
So if you think of your hands as kind of like two different molecules, that's what stereoisomers are. They're the exact same parts, exact same atoms, all bonded to each other in the same structure,
Mhm.
but with a different spatial arrangement.
Okay. That
Yeah.
makes sense.
Not necessarily, when I say the same structure, what I mean is all the atoms bonded to the same atoms.
Mhm.
Just in it, they're arranged differently in space. It's kind of a difficult thing just to do with audio,
Yeah.
but the easiest way, like I said, is just to look at your hands. And this is really important because most organic compounds, which is the compounds that we're made of, organic basically just means it's got carbon in it. It's carbon based. So they're created around carbon atom chains they've got a carbon backbone. And those are really important chemicals. Those are the ones that we use for life. So, for example, DNA has got a carbon backbone, and it's spiraled in one particular way. Usually, it spirals. It all spirals to the right. The thing is that a lot of chemicals that are used for life exhibit chirality, and what chirality is, it's basically sort of handedness for molecules. It means that a molecule has a mirror image that is not superimposable upon itself, but like sort of the same structure. So basically, your left hand and your right hand are chiral, and to each other.
So
Yeah.
they are the same but unique also.
Yes, exactly. So basically, what it means is that they're mirror images, but you can't superimpose one on
Right.
top of the other. But the interesting part here is that they're called so not the interesting part. They're called enantiomers. So you've got isomers, which are different sort of structure basically, and enantiomers, which means mirror images of each other, but not
okay.
superimposable. We'll understand why this is important soon. But this is relevant to a ton of biological molecules. So the double helix of DNA twists like a right-handed screw, as opposed to twisting like a left-handed screw. It's chiral. It can twist left or it can twist right, but ours twists right. Glucose as well, one of the the sugar, one of the most common sugars. That's also chiral. Amino acids can be chiral as well. And you can even see that same sort of thing in snails. Snails can show handedness, you could say, with the way that their shells spiral. Some of them spiral sort of clockwise, and some of them spiral like a right-handed direction, others spiral in a left-handed direction.
Yes, isn't there something significant about that? There was something fairly recently in the last few years about them needing to try and find a snail with the same spiral or the opposite spiral to mate.
Oh, I did not.
Never
I
heard of
found
that.
that as an example. I did not look into snails.
So, this is a story about Jeremy, who was a brown garden snail, and he had a shell that twisted in the opposite direction from most snails, which is extremely rare. And because his mating apparatus, meaning his penis, or whatever snails have as a penis,
They're
is
hermaphroditic. They
also
have both.
unusually situated, he'd only be able to mate with another left twisting snail. Does that make sense?
It does, but what's interesting here is that I'm pretty sure most, if not all, snails are hermaphroditic, which means that they have both male and female
So
sex
that's
organs.
when I said So when I said mating apparatus, it means whatever mating apparatus that snails have.
Oh, I thought
he needed to have another left twisting snail
Yeah, that's very
in order to.
Weird.
And I don't think he ever did, and he's dead now.
Why don't we try some
Poor snail.
artificial snail-emination, or what? Artificial insemination. I
That's
tried
a
to say the
reach.
two words at once.
That's a reach.
That's a reach, isn't it?
So
Why don't we try
basically, he was a snail incel, is what this story is.
In snail.
In shell.
Ah.
We got there.
Had to cycle through a lot of them there, but we
No, not that
we
one. Not that. In shell. There it is.
got there at a snail's pace. And thank you very much, and that'll close us out for tonight. Thank
All
you for
right,
watching
see you
the show,
next
guys.
week.
Yeah, but effectively what that means is that there is handedness all over the sort of biological world.
Sorry. Final point. Jeremy did find a mate.
Yes.
He and his mate
Go on,
had
Jeremy.
56 offspring.
Oh, blimey. So there's a lot of little Jeremys running around.
Were they-
A
somewhere.
moment for Jeremy.
Were they right or
everyone.
left spirals?
They were right spirals.
Interesting. That's really interesting.
Yeah.
Very strange.
So it's not even like a because he must have found a left spiraling mate. It's not even like it could be a what's it called recessive trait, but one of them didn't pass it on in their snail sperm or snail egg.
No, that's not how it would work. If it's a recessive trait, then they'd both have it.
Yeah, of course, but they don't pass it on in every mating session necessarily, do they?
But they have no other gene to pass on. So the way that
Could they not have two recessive traits?
what do you mean?
Maybe I'm wrong.
So when you've
Yeah, I
got a
think I'm wrong.
recessive trait,
Doesn't matter.
when you've got a recessive trait, basically what that means is you need to have both genes. You need to have basically,
you're right.
you've got two
so they've
copies
got
of each
two
gene,
copies of the
basically.
Yeah.
You've got two copies of each gene, one from each parent. If you've got a recessive gene, what that means is that you need both copies to be the same for that
Yes.
phenotype to occur.
So how on earth
would-
did Jeremy have right twisting snail children?
It's probably something more complicated than the simplest of
So it's
genetics.
not a
I think.
gene. Right, okay.
Well, no, it could be a gene.
Right.
No, it could absolutely still be gene. Bear in mind the dominant recessive genetics that you're taught in school. Genetics are a little more complex than just
Right.
is this one
sure.
dominant? Is this one recessive?
Mm.
Because otherwise, hair color would be like hair color is something that is not a strict on or off. It's controlled by multiple genes, really, isn't it? Well, not necessarily multiple genes, but multiple factors. Well, multiple genes and multiple factors.
Mm.
There's a lot of things that go into hair
Yes.
color, is what I mean. Anyway, moving back onto chirality. As I've said, chirality is basically just handedness with molecules. So you can, like I said, you can see it in organisms. This is a really interesting one. There's this essential oil called carvone or carvone. I think it's carvone. It's just one example of many.
Carbone.
It's just one example of many wherein the right and left-handed forms of the molecule are very different. In that one of them smells like caraway and the other one smells like spearmint.
Oh,
Yeah.
And the only
So-
difference is the handedness.
weird.
Yeah, the spatial arrangement. So this is what I'm saying. it's actually quite important. So what this is introducing is the fact that different spatial sort of arrangements of atoms can end up having different sort of effects. So one molecule could be, say, for example, completely harmless, and one enantiomer can be completely harmless, and the other one could be very dangerous. But one can smell one way, one can smell a different way. And bear in mind that it's not just mirror images. Chirality is specifically about mirror images, but stereoisomers are just the same sort of molecules, but with the atoms arranged in different ways. So it doesn't need to be just a mirror image or not. If you rearrange the atoms,
just jumble it up.
Yeah, if you rearrange the atoms, if you have a way of rearranging the atoms in space that keeps all the same bonds, then that's still a stereoisomer. It's just not chiral. Chiral specifically refers to that sort of mirror image, left-right handedness thing. Yeah. So we all good in chirality. We feel like we've got
that. That makes sense.
Yeah.
It will definitely drop out of my brain in about 3.5 minutes. But yes, for now, chirality.
As he continues to think about the snail.
Can you please?
I was still thinking about that snail.
Oh my god! Look, Cutforth, I don't want to drag this into a conversation about snails, but also I'm still thinking about that snail.
I'm not dragging you guys in with my thoughts, but I'm still thinking about the snail.
So, have I mentioned thalidomide yet?
You haven't mentioned it.
Only in the intro.
Yes. Well, I'm mentioning it once more with the question, what is thalidomide?
It's a drug.
Wow.
It does sound like a drug, yeah.
It does sound, yeah. It is a drug, yeah.
A druggy name.
It is a drug. So it's a drug that was developed in the 50s in West Germany, because that's when Germany was split into East and West for people that don't know history. So it was developed in the 50s by Chemie Grunenthal GmbH. You must have heard of that one before, surely.
GmbH?
GmbH.
Is that...
Good Morning Britain something.
Is that something that you're just not prepared to pronounce, or is that an acronym?
No, it's Chemie Grunenthal GmbH. It's not that I'm not pronouncing it. I'm literally reading what I have written down.
What does GmbH mean?
It's a company. It's a pharmaceutical company. Oh, did you think it was
Corey SCI GUYS?
Huh?
I'm not familiar with pharmaceutical companies.
Oh, hang on. Oh, right. This is the name of the company.
Yes.
Sorry. Ignore me. Well, but the GmbH must stand for something.
You could, honestly, you're free to Google it if you want. I just didn't think it was terribly relevant.
No, I was just trying to understand.
No. Honestly, go ahead and Google it while I'm saying the rest of it. So, it was originally sort of wanted to be used as a sedative. But then it started being used to treat a lot of different things because, hey, this was a wonder drug of sorts, thalidomide. Oh boy, you could use it for anything. You could use it for cold, flu, nausea, morning sickness in pregnant women. Even one could use it for
wonder drug.
Wonder drug indeed. So, as I said, first developed in 1954, introduced into the UK in 1958 under the brand name Distaval. Now, it was produced by the Distillers Company, Biochemicals Limited, under the brand name, as I said, Distaval, Tenzaval, Valgrain, and Asmaval. So the ads that they used claimed Distaval can be given with complete safety to a pregnant woman and nursing mothers without adverse effect on mother or child.
Ah, that's hopeful.
It is hopeful. Well, here's a little spoiler for you. The drug was actually withdrawn from the UK in 1961.
Why was it dangerous?
We don't know that yet. Anyway.
Would we be talking about it if it was entirely safe, James?
True.
I'm just
As a
telling
little
you.
side note, I did look up what GmbH stands for. It stands for Gesellschaft mit beschränkter Haftung.
Something with...
Is German your first language by any chance?
Look, can you send it in the chat and I can see what it says?
It means company with limited liability. It's like the equivalent of like an LLC in the UK, Limited Liability Corporation. Yes.
German.
Okay.
Anyway, so the drug, as I said, it was initially prescribed for just a sedative. Then it was used for lots of different things like cold, sickness, and then also it was used for pneumonia as well. basically it was really good at getting rid of nausea. It was really good for knocking you out. Great thing. Like I said, a wonder drug.
Is this one of these things where they think they found this incredible cure-all thing and it turns out to be absolutely awful?
Well, look, I wouldn't. I wouldn't know. I'll have to continue reading my notes to find out.
Ooh.
So, interestingly, one country didn't approve thalidomide for marketing and distribution. Can you guess which one it was?
Was it Germany?
No, they're the ones that made it. Oh, it will.
No, I thought
think
that they would make it and then
America?
export it and be like, not for us, please.
I actually think East Germany didn't. So West Germany did.
Right.
I think the East
Oh.
Germany didn't. Don't necessarily quote me on that. So, like I said, fairly sure that West Germany did. Fairly sure that East Germany didn't. But it was America. So America did not let it be sold. It did not get past the FDA. So a pharmacologist, Francis Oldham Kelsey, basically would not let the distributing company, distribute the drug, basically because they didn't have any clinical evidence to deny the reports from patients who
Yeah.
had nerve damage in their limbs after long-term thalidomide use.
Oh.
So it was never used in the United States. But then
Mm.
this is the thing. That was after long-term use. So, understandable. But it was being used in lots of different countries in the world. Spain, for example, Germany, the UK. So, what went wrong? What went wrong, guys? Do you know what went wrong?
Everything.
Well,
Was it a mirror?
idea.
Was some of the things they made a mirror thing? A chiro?
I mean, look. maybe we
Thing.
don't look. We'll get into it. We'll get into it. All I can really say is it's potentially one of the biggest man-made, I guess, tragedies in the world, or at least it's regarded as such.
No.
So apparently, now this is the thing. I found actually conflicting evidence on this. So this is we don't know the exact mechanisms of how thalidomide has its effect. To be perfectly honest, it's still being studied. And in my research, I couldn't find something that distinctly said this is absolutely how it works. But there are reports, and from a few sort of reliable sources, saying that one of the enantiomers, one of the mirror images, one of the mirror images has sedative effects, whereas the other one is teratogenic. You'll find out.
What does that mean?
Oh, you'll find out very soon. So the interesting thing is that under in your body, so in vivo,
Mhm.
you can they actually switch between each other. So they like if you have only left-handed ones, you chuck it in your body, it'll boom convert it to the right one, and they'll be pretty much equal. And that will form what's called a racemic mix, which basically just means an equal mix of the left-handed and the right-handed. So if you've got if you've got a chiral molecule, if you got a racemic mix, if it's 50-50 basically, an equal mix. So here's the big thing. Thalidomide created a range of disabilities in babies, including the shortening and absence of limbs, malformation of hands and digits, damage to ears and eyes, sensory impairment, facial disfigurement / palsy, and damage to the brain, internal organs, and skeletal structure.
Oh boy.
Many
what the
of the
flip?
survivors are experiencing early onset age-related issues such as osteoarthritis, joint mobility issues, and coronary heart disease.
How long did it take them to figure this out?
5 years. About 5 years. Yeah, it's not good. I'm surprised you guys haven't heard about this. I was taught this in chemistry. in school.
I think I have actually. Now that I remember, you're
Yeah,
talking
and
about
you know,
it, I
interestingly
remember
enough,
this. Yeah.
I think I was thinking about doing this as an episode, and someone actually emailed the topic in, which was a coincidence. So
Literally
that's,
as we were about to record, by the way.
well, yeah, no, they sent a message as we were about to record. They actually sent the email beforehand, but Lizzie actually suggested this to us. So thank you, Lizzie, for sending that in. Very lucky
Thank you, Lizzie.
that this was already kind of on the docket. Anyway, so very smart. Clearly, you can see into the future.
So this stuff where the kids were being born with shortened arms and all these horrible things going on. This was when a mother was taking it.
Yes, so we'll get into that. But I'm about to get into that. So this is the thing. I said that they said it was safe for pregnant women Did I not?
You did say that.
I did say
You
that.
did say that,
Specifically.
yes.
They also
As did
said
they.
that. Yes. Here's the thing. At the time, the way that research for drugs worked meant that you didn't necessarily need to do human testing in order to get a drug okayed for humans. And in fact, they didn't test this on pregnant women at all. Just wasn't something that they did. So, yeah, they didn't realize that this would happen. Now, bear in mind, if you're not pregnant, probably fine. You know, if you're not nursing, you're
Did they
probably
test
fine.
it on a pregnant anything?
No, I don't think so. No, they test it on mice, I think. But funnily enough, mice seem to be much more resistant to this than other mammals and other non-human primates. I'll get more into the exact sort of how that happened in a bit. I'll just go through exactly what the results of it were. So it's not necessarily easy to get solid numbers on how many people were born with basically how many people were born that were affected by thalidomide. See, the issue here is that a lot of babies a lot of fetuses that were affected by thalidomide would not have been carried to term, would not have been born. Effectively, would have either miscarried. Basically would have miscarried. So it's really difficult to tell the exact numbers there. Apparently, over 10,000 children were born worldwide affected by the drug. And then 3,000 or less survived.
Oh,
Well, survive now.
yeah.
So, and this, bear in mind, this was in the 50s. So,
And they're still alive today.
which is a big drop. You wouldn't expect in any other sort of group that say weren't affected by this. You wouldn't expect to see that big of a drop. So there are apparently 460-ish, possibly less, around about 400 or so people in the UK who were affected by thalidomide that are receiving beneficiaries basically from the. Oh, sorry. There are around about 460, potentially less. I'm not exactly sure when this was last updated, but there are around 400 or so people basically receiving money from the Thalidomide Trust. So you can tell that that's probably roughly about the number of people in the UK that were affected by thalidomide. The thing about the thing about this is that there was also a high rate of infant mortality, which basically means stillborn or babies die. Well, not stillborn, but babies dying shortly after birth. So that's as high as 40% for babies born with severe thalidomide embryopathy, and many of them, like I said, were either miscarried or stillborn. It's truly awful, and this literally, bear in mind, came down to the fact that we just didn't test it on pregnant women. We didn't even test it on people before we were like,
You haven't tested it on them. Don't say it's specifically for them.
Well, yeah, that's the thing. That's really odd, isn't it? And this is another thing that I kind of wanted to bring up. One of the reasons I did this episode is that you find in science that a lot of the time people we test on are generally white men, or in the cases of last week's episode, black men without their consent. But generally we test on men, and so you might find that actually with a lot of women's health we're quite far behind where we'd expect to be, just because we don't necessarily test things. And also sometimes men and women can react to different medications differently, and obviously a lot of women can get pregnant. I mean,
what would the reason be that you test most medication on men, out of interest, or like just a postulation?
Bias towards males.
Bias towards males in what way?
And that they're trying to find a treatment, so they want to.
So you'll test it on males rather than on both men and women.
Women are being excluded from clinical research, so it's actually a deliberate act to take women out of clinical research.
Well, this is the thing. You say deliberate act. That's in the same way that racism and sexism is deliberate. It's not necessarily like, haha, yeah, fuck women. There's a bias against women. So you say it's a deliberate act. I don't think that's necessarily.
Yeah, well, I just mean what, like, there's a bias against women being in clinical research. But
no, there's just sexism. Women are disregarded and kind of forgotten about, in the same sense that like.
That's so weird.
Yeah. Oh wow.
I mean, I'm not surprised at it. I'm just amazed that that even in something that like this is a scientific field where obviously bodies that are different are going to react in different ways, and we're just that stupid. Like that's crazy.
This is the thing. It's because I think it's because we don't notice sexism. Like,
Sure.
as I say, as men generally, unless you are made aware of it,
Mhm.
you do not notice sexism, and so
Right.
you can think yourself as a very logical or scientific being, but ultimately you're still affected by your own biases, and so that's the point. It's not just enough to be not sexist. You have to be specifically sort of anti-sexist or feminist. Like you can't just be like, oh yeah, no, I recognize this as a thing. You need to be actively checking your biases and actively making sure that you're always aware of the results of that, because otherwise you can end up with cases of basically just
Limbless children.
you can basically end up with cases where you just kind of like don't pay attention to the fact that there are physiological differences and that you might be overlooking something.
Okay, well, thank you for answering my question. I have learned something.
Yeah, I mean, there's just for one example, there were large studies on low-dose aspirin to prevent heart attacks published in the 70s and 80s, and those are usually cited as those are basically clinical trials which people say are examples of people only studying men and then drawing conclusions that are not true for women. So this isn't something that I'm just sort of making up. This is something that's actually...
No, I don't.
Oh, no, this isn't just for you. This is for anyone listening as well. This isn't something that I'm just making up, or this is just one example. If you go ahead and look into it, and this is not specifically what the episode is about, but if you go ahead and look into it, there's actually a bit of a clinical bias against women. I say a bit. Of course, there's a bit of a clinical bias against women. They weren't allowed to vote until the 20s or 30s. Like, like sexism is science is not excluded from sexism. It's something that is pervasive. And if you think that you're above it, then you're probably acting upon sexist biases yourself. So the consistent sort of symptoms of thalidomide embryopathy were basically found by looking at the most severely affected kids and then trying to figure out what the criteria for diagnosis were, what the criteria for diagnosis were. And this has basically just been used since then. The World Health Organization looked into it as well, and there's been like a new sort of broader system for diagnosis has been suggested. But effectively, this is something that was used for a short period of time. I mean, a long period of time, but not decades. It was used for 5 years and has affected thousands of people across the world. Literally just because we didn't test things properly. And this is not too far in the past. It's quite literally.
I mean, there's still people alive, right?
Yeah. There, over 400. It was in the 50s. It's not too far away. In fact, it's what, like 40 years BL. Not. Yeah. It's
not too far back.
Not too far back at all. No. So it was traded under a lot of different names, and like I said, it took 5 years for them to trace it back. And bear in mind, it wouldn't have been necessarily the easiest thing to trace back to, because, like I said, it was traded under a lot of different names, apparently in 49 countries. And so, if you have this random spate of children born with these sort of very specific disabilities, and some children not being able to carry to term, and all of that stuff, it's difficult to trace back the exact source, especially
when all the mothers have like different medications listed, like with different names and stuff. Yeah,
exactly. And you could, if you're taking thalidomide for morning sickness, I think I don't even think it was. I think it might have been over the counter as well.
Oh wow!
I've definitely read that somewhere where it was basically. I'm pretty sure it was
not even prescribed. It was like, come on down and get some.
Well, the thing is, like, I'm taking it as being over the counter because it was being advertised. And you
don't usually have,
and it wasn't in America, which is where you have prescription drug advertisements.
Yeah, and the thing is, I'm not so hot on British advertising law as it pertains to drugs, but I'm fairly sure that was still still true back then. That you wouldn't be allowed to advertise a drug unless it was sort of over the counter. You wouldn't be allowed to advertise a prescription drug. So I'm fairly sure it was over the counter, but yeah, I mean, we just don't know how many people it affected because it was kind of everywhere. So yeah. Mm-mm. So another reason that it was really difficult to kind of figure out what the source or what the root cause was because there were so many different sort of things that it could affect. Like I said, you heard me at the start: eyes, limbs, ears, all of those different parts, and it could affect you at different sort of It could affect you differently depending on when in the pregnancy it was taken.
Mhm.
So if it was taken at a specific point, it would affect sort of the eyes. At a different point, it would affect the ears, limbs. So with this sort of broad range of effects, it's really difficult to pinpoint exactly what it is because you wouldn't necessarily know the connection between this child's born with these eyes that are slightly abnormal and this child's born with sort of abnormal limb growth. Like you wouldn't necessarily directly connect those, which is why again it took so long. So the effects only occur if you take it between apparently 20 and 37 days after conception. Apparently after that, it doesn't really have any effect on the fetus. So in the 50s, scientists, they just didn't know apparently that the effects of a drug, it could go across the placental barrier. So have we spoken about placentas before on the podcast?
Yeah,
I'll give you a
week or two ago.
Briefly recently, I think.
Yeah, I think we have really recently.
In the last episode about a horrible scientific study that wasn't
yes,
carried
that
out very
was
well.
it.
Wait. Was it just the last? Was it the last episode, or was it the episode before that? Because we've done quite a few episodes on horrible scientific studies.
I think it was the last episode.
Okay.
It was the episode about
The racist syphilis
untreated
Syphilis in
what was it?
Negro
Syphilis
male.
in yes, black men. Very sad episode.
Yep. Well, look. Hopefully, we'll have a much more chipper one next week.
What a horrible title that is, by the way. Just awful.
No.
Oh wait, the title of the video or the title?
I'm not going. The title that you read out of the study that I'm not going to repeat.
Untreated syphilis in the Negro male. Yeah.
Yeah.
So the placenta is the way that the fetus gets nutrients and all of that from the mother. So you've basically got your placenta, which is kind of up really close to the mother's sort of bloodstream or blood vessels, and they transfer sort of like I think some waste and some sort of food over to and oxygen over to the fetus. So the mother breathes in, gets nice and oxygenated in her blood. That's lovely, and then I suppose and passes all of that stuff over to the fetus. Gets all the food over to the fetus, and the fetus uses all that stuff. It's like, oh, great, fantastic. Passes all the waste back to the mother, and the mother's like, great, I'll get rid of that in the way I normally do.
It's just brilliant, isn't it? Such a great system.
Yeah. So the way that this works is without actually it doesn't need to have any direct contact. I say direct contact. There's no real direct contact between the mother's bloodstream and the child's bloodstream. So they are still sort of separate systems there.
Yeah.
So are they going across a membrane?
Yeah.
Right.
So it's not like there's a direct flow from the mother into the fetus.
The mother's blood doesn't flow into the fetus. They're just very close, and then the stuff that needs to diffuses across.
That's really clever. Humans just did that, didn't they?
Well, not just humans, mammals.
Well, mammals, yeah.
Yeah, mammals. They're bloody great.
We just did that.
We're very good at that. Go us.
What a good invention.
But
Whoever thought of that?
None of us are good at it.
Yeah.
No, we're all quite
We all
bad
had
at
it.
to be fair.
We all had it. We didn't do it.
We took
though.
it from our mother.
I grew myself.
I won't take credit for that. I think my mum did that. I grew myself.
I grew myself in her oven.
You grew
With the-
yourself
with the
insofar
help of who?
as somebody who is has incredibly rich parents and never works at all, and their parents pay for everything, but got themselves through life. Sure, yeah.
Look, my mum gave me the ingredients, and I made a lovely meal. Okay, she bought and paid for them, and I've made 3-courser. That's what I've done.
3-course curry.
3 courses of curry. Just a little spicy. So in the 1950s, they didn't know that the effects of a drug could be passed across the placental sort of barrier. Apparently, even though that they knew that alcohol could affect a fetus.
But how
Alcohol's a drug. I don't know. Alcohol's a drug. Apparently, they didn't know.
Oh,
that.
It's magical.
Magic, clearly.
Magic.
So apparently, they didn't know that. So the use of medication where in pregnant people just wasn't very strictly controlled at all. So you could get medication when you were pregnant without them really testing whether it was fine for pregnant women to have or not. So, like I said, if you have thalidomide at a specific point during pregnancy, you could just it could really severely affect the sort of growth of the fetus, which just had these awful effects in so many fetuses not being carried to term, and children being born with sort of life-altering disabilities. And obviously, so many people have lived full lives. I'm not saying that a disability inhibits your ability to have a meaningful or full life. But obviously, that doesn't mean that the thalidomide sort
The
of
world is built with the assumption that you have limbs, you know?
yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. In fact, I've seen the sort of prosthetics that they built for some kids, and it was literally sort of like it was like a full suit, effectively, of just legs and arms
Oh,
sort of
wow.
strapped on. It looked like most of a person,
Yeah.
because it was basically just your sort of torso,
Yeah.
that you kind of strap in, and you control the sort of you control the rest of the limbs. But yeah, that, like I said, not to say that living with a disability is not living a full life, but obviously this is something that that didn't need to happen at all. It was just there was a lot of pain that came from it. There was a lot of death that came from it, and a lot of lives impacted where they otherwise would not have needed to be.
And it's so interesting this because nowadays, I suppose maybe actually partly because of this, we are so cautious about any kind of medication going to pregnant women.
Yeah, definitely in part
Or
because
pregnant people. Sorry, pregnant people. But yeah, I think probably because of what we learned here.
Yeah. So, how did all of this actually come to happen? Like, how did they make such a big mistake?
Where did it all go wrong?
Well, during early testing, the sort of researchers they realized that it was basically impossible to give these animals a lethal dose. I'm pretty sure they were testing on mice. So yeah, it was really difficult to give them a lethal dose, which makes sense. But also, they didn't necessarily test it on pregnant animals, and all of these different things. And yeah, the biggest issue is that if you give it to someone that's pregnant, then it affects the growth of the fetus, which we've seen the results of. So as it says here, thalidomide was licensed in July 1956 for over-the-counter sale in Germany. So that completely changed the way that drugs are tested. So the sort of thalidomide disaster, it's called the thalidomide disaster tragedy scandal. It was for one of the first times, apparently, it showed that there are differences between the way that different mammals react to drugs, which seems so obvious now, right? This is, I mean, this is the thing about knowledge over time. As we learn things, obviously sometimes we learn things through massive mistakes like this, but as we learn things,
When you then
you've got kids that grow up with already that knowledge. It seems so obvious, but at some point we had to learn that. Like, for example, at some point we had to learn that giving a drug to a mouse and to a human is not going to have the same effect on their body.
Why would a drug affect a mouse and a human differently?
Yeah, I mean,
but now we're like, oh, obviously, we're different creatures.
Exactly, and like I said, mice are less sensitive to thalidomide. Non-human primates, rabbits, and human primates are sensitive to thalidomide. And we apparently still don't know why mice are less sensitive to it. And we've changed the sort of screening sort of policies for drugs now to be including multiple species, human trials, and then also in vitro tests, which are done in glass, basically in test tubes, so not in a living thing. So that's kind of the thalidomide, I don't know what to call it, the thalidomide tragedy, disaster. That's the story of thalidomide right there. I mean, I could go on to tell you guys about what happened to the children of thalidomide, which is kind of what we call the people that were affected by it in utero, I suppose. Yeah. I mean, and this is the thing. Initially, they didn't give any compensation, but in February 1968, after a legal battle, they had 40% of the assessed damages given back to 62 of the children that were affected in the UK. And this was paid by distillers, who were the people that produced the drug for the UK. And this was the result of a settlement, like an initial settlement. But everyone thought, that's not really enough, is it? That's not really good.
No.
So, yeah, the Sunday Times sort of led a really massive campaign in 1972, and then in 1973 there was a final settlement from distillers, which gave them a lump sum payment to another 367 kids. And then it was the same basis from the same basis as the original 62. But then it also meant that they established the Thalidomide Trust, which provides support and assistance. One of those sort of pieces of assistance being an annual grant to all survivors of thalidomide. And then since 2010, they've also received a health grant from health departments in all of the 4 countries of the UK to meet the needs that of their health because of the thalidomide damage. Because obviously they've got decreased health. I've seen something where apparently a large proportion of the people that were affected by thalidomide actually have health in the bottom 2% or lower of people in the UK.
Oh wow!
Supposedly, yeah. So I mean that's the story of thalidomide. I mean we've been through a lot through chirality, through the testing of drugs, and the effects of not doing proper tests. And this is the thing. Simply, I mean, and again, we don't know the exact mechanism, so we're not 100% sure this is true. But potentially, simply a change of the spatial arrangement of atoms in a molecule can result in a difference between something being a sedative and something being tetragenic for embryos. So yeah, maybe we should
Really
test
bad.
things a little more thoroughly, especially testing on the exact demographics that you want to
That
give.
you're advertising to.
Yeah, that you're advertising to and you
Yeah.
want to give the drugs to, especially when it can affect embryonic
Yeah.
development. But in spite of all this, you can still use the drug today. It's used to treat a lot of different things. But bearing in mind, if you can get pregnant, then you need to be on, you need to be on birth control and take regular pregnancy tests, supposedly. So it's very strictly regulated. I think you also need to sign forms to make sure that you understand, what's going on with thalidomide. And if you can potentially get someone else pregnant, then you also need to use contraception. So they are very, very strict about.
Wow. So can it be passed from somebody? Can it be passed between people?
I haven't
like
found
the
anything
potential
saying
for it?
that. I think it's just an extra precaution.
An extra precaution. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
But yeah, I mean, this is the thing. It's supposedly quite good for treating some cancers, leprosy, Crohn's disease, and HIV, and some other things. So it does have some use. But it led to one of the biggest disasters, man-made disasters in the world.
Really sad.
It's wow.
You've given us 2 really depressing scientific failures in 2 weeks.
Yes,
Well,
we have. No, we have. I'm just questioning whether I would call it a scientific failure or a complete failure of just
human decency.
human failure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because there are so many stages in this where, like, it's okay, you can blame the drug company, but then it was also signed off for use by every health service in every country or every drug issuer and by every distributor.
Yeah.
Like, there's so many points at which somebody could have caught this and gone, wait, you're marketing it to people who can get pregnant, but you never tested on people who are pregnant? That's weird.
That would require that was something people knew about then. That's the issue. And I'm not saying that this is not.
Oh, no, of course.
I mean, I'm not saying that whoopsie doodle, it's an accident. Nobody's at fault. What I'm saying is that it's insane. It's insane that the world that existed then was one wherein you could market a drug to pregnant women without having tested it on pregnant women.
Yeah. Well, it's like that. It's just that Neil deGrasse Tyson quote, isn't it? Which is that at the I can't remember the exact quote, but it's something like at the forefront, at the cutting edge of science, the risks are incredibly high, and people are going to get hurt.
Yeah. And it's truly awful. And I mean, this is the thing. We don't do these kind of topics to make light of them. And yeah, every now and then throughout the episodes, we'll make jokes, but we're always punching up and not down. We're never making jokes specifically about the serious topics.
It's just the reality of a lot of science, though, isn't it?
Yeah, it's the reality. And I think
a lot of stuff ups.
I think to avoid these topics, so as to potentially to avoid these topics would not be something I would want to do. I think I bring these topics to you guys because I think you guys need to know about them, but I also think everyone listening and everyone watching should know about these things because these are massive failures, not just in science, but massive failures in the human race because you can trace them back to sexism, racism, or just a lack of care. And I just think that's important to talk about. I don't think that this show should just be about all the fun and cool, wacky things that science does, because that's just not reality.
The reality is science is depressing sometimes.
Reality is depressing sometimes,
Yeah,
isn't
that's true.
Wow. Shall we end the show on that?
You better bring something really fun next week.
Do you know what? Okay, look.
Yes.
I absolutely promise you
Okay.
that next week will be something totally fun with no downsides whatsoever. There we go. Thank you for watching. You can find the full references for this episode in the description. Subscribe for new episodes every Sunday, and why not leave us a nice wee comment? You can support the pod at patreon.com/SciGuys, or you can send us an email at sciguyspod@gmail.com. I'm not Corey everywhere.
I am Jamkin everywhere.
And I am Luke Cutforth everywhere.
Yes, you are.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Goodbye.
Bye.
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 Bye. Bye.